It's the Brad and John Show.
Brad and John Show. This is the B block, the Bravo block for December 17th, 2024. And we start this about 7:20. The reason I mention that is it gives you reference, not because of the fact you don't know what time it is right now, but if you're listening in the future on the podcast or on our video performance on YouTube, you'll know what in reference this is to as far as the date and all that kind of good stuff. Okay, Jane Dueker. I got to ask you a question. Okay, here's my crazy question for John Combest. Do you think she does her own tweets, or does she have somebody doing this for her?
So you're referring to, it was a retweet she had that was a deep dive on the guy who shot the CBC player,
well,
right?
I'm just saying in general. She tweets quite a bit.
She doesn't have somebody write her stuff. Like, I mean, if you read it, it's very much Jane.
But if you read the Trump stuff, it's very much Trump. But we found out that he doesn't do his tweets.
I don't think Jane has a cabana boy that just follows her around and records her tweets. I don't think that's accurate.
Okay, Jason Rivera. Who is Jason Rivera? Is he a reporter for one of the local news organizations?
He is not. He is an independent journalist, and he has a website called louleaks.com. That's Louleaks. So he's been doing a lot of independent investigative journalism focused almost exclusively, I would say, from what I've seen, on St. Louis City. So disclosure, I don't know Jason. I follow him on X, and I read a lot of what he writes.
I will say I'm very impressed. How do you feel about him?
Oh, it's the piece that he did, and I think this is what you're getting into, on this guy who ended up shooting and being responsible for the death of the CBC student was just incredible. And as people have pointed out, Brad, in the replies and the comments, where is this coverage from KSDK? Where is this coverage from KMOV? Why don't we see this? Why don't we see the depth of this in any local journalism?
Well, you would think that an organization that had 34 reporters, who has 34? Oh, St. Louis Public Radio. You think that St. Louis Public Radio would send, 10 reporters to cover this?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen.
Okay, the story is Jane retweets this. And
if for folks who want to find it, by the way, Brad, I had it up. I very rarely link to local stories because that's not the jurisdiction of my website, and it never has been and it never will be. I linked to it today expecting that you would want to talk about it. So I have a link up to Jason Rivera's thread at johncombest.com today.
Well, what he has documented, the guy, and by the way, I don't mean to correct you, but you said this guy they arrested shot Colin Brown. We have to say allegedly, John.
Okay, sure. Allegedly.
Allegedly. Okay, we have to keep our nose clean on that. Okay, Jason Rivera, and he starts off the thread by saying, for years, Garrett Jordan, he's the one who's been arrested and charged with the murder of Colin Brown. Once again, for years, Garrett Jordan has been a menace to society. Who allowed it? Why did it take the death of a young man like Colin Brown, a child of promise with his whole life ahead of him, for the system to act? How many other victims have potentially been shot and killed by Jordan? Now, he goes on and does all this incredible reporting, and if you read the thread of all the things he's put together, this Jordan guy has probably killed a half dozen people.
That we know of. I think that's what Rivera points out is that, and Rivera responded to someone in the comments saying, look, essentially there's other stuff that Rivera couldn't report on because he wasn't able to substantiate it, that Garrett was perhaps involved in other murders.
Right, and all sorts of crazy stuff, and most of it is gang or rap related. Would I be able to, would you agree with?
Yeah, that's fair. And I mean, rap is generous, Brad. So, and let's pause for 1 second and say, when these stories describe someone as a rapper, it could be Brad Hildebrand going out on the street at a street corner and saying a couple rhymes and calling himself a rapper because he put it on YouTube.
Well, and you know what's sort of interesting about this is, rap is to podcasts in the respect that now everybody has a podcast.
That's a great way to put it, Brad.
You know what I mean?
I sing in the shower, therefore I'm a singer.
Right. And some of the podcasts just plain old suck. And some of them, hey, I'm going to do a podcast. And they do 2 episodes and then it's gone.
And then they're done. Yeah. So let's get back to the story. You mentioned rap.
Well,
okay. So he's a supposed rapper, which means he's allegedly committing violence.
And what's interesting is, if you read the thread here, there are people. Here's a perfect example. Here's a guy by the name of Dominic Bell. He says, Jason, you are doing the work many are afraid to do. Thanks. Okay, afraid to do or lazy to do, whatever. The crazy part of this is how they, and I'm thinking to myself, how in the world did they nail this Jordan guy? You know, how did the police come up with him? And you got to, if you read the story, you have to say, this is some pretty incredible police work. Wouldn't you agree, John?
Yeah, I would say so. And
essentially, there's all sorts of crazy things about the fact that they have dash cam from various people. They've done, deep dives into his cell phone locations and things like that. And not only that, they have a video of him doing a rap or something inside a very unique Audi automobile, which was seen at the crime scene. I mean, it's just amazing all the different things they put together. But what Jason Rivera puts together is this long stream of, this guy having problems with some of his arch enemies in the gang business. They end up dead. One guy, goes
an alleged snitch ended up dead right away.
Right, exactly. That was the one I was just going to say. A guy essentially snitches on him. The police find him shot to death, sitting at a traffic light in North City, shot in the head. Like the day after he would talk to the police. Okay, and you go like, okay, this is, And the amazing thing about this is, once again, we have our mayor who has $250 million sitting in a checking account. And this is the Ram settlement money. Plus, there's ARPA money as well, too, as I do believe. And there's still ARPA money they haven't spent?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Okay. A right-thinking person would say, you know what? The city of St. Louis has a problem. The city of St. Louis has a problem that we have a crime problem. And we're going to continue to see declining population in the city of St. Louis. People are going to be hesitant to come into the city. And especially now the way downtown is, people are going to be hesitant to go downtown because they don't want to get carjacked or their car broken into. What should be our number one priority? You know what? Our number one priority should be turning around the crime issue in the city of St. Louis. Well, gee, how do you do that? You hire some more police officers. Well, we're already, 400 short. And remember I told you the story that Jane Dueker went through one day, a Mark Reardon story, and went through the whole thing about, when you say there's 800 police officers, and she went through the whole thing, there's actually 200 of them that are on disability, and she knocked it down to the point where after the dust cleared, she says there's 400 cops in the streets in St. Louis. And I'm going like, wow, that doesn't sound good.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And you start doing the math. You think, okay, 400 cops, I think they're running 8-hour shifts. I don't know if they're running 12s or not, but let's say they're running 12-hour shifts, okay? So you got 365 days in a year. You start doing the math. You think like, okay, 400 cops, 12-hour shifts, and it gets to the point where like on some of the nights there's maybe 2 guys in a district. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
I do know.
And you start going like, that ain't good. But this Jason Rivera guy, he's got thing after thing after thing where he's essentially, giving all these crime statistics of how this guy was involved with this murder, he's involved with that murder, but he's never been charged. But the interesting thing was he's been arrested many times and he's back out in the street. How is that possible?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that certainly speaks to what it's like to prosecute somebody in St. Louis City, don't you think?
Well, I don't. I guess what bothers me is you see things like this and you say, okay, how come somebody just doesn't come along and say, okay, you know what? We're just going to change things. And you look at people that have done things like that in the past. Unfortunately, Rudy Giuliani was noted for the fact that he took a very, very broken New York City and really turned it around. And there have been other instances of this. Matter of fact, there's a big story that broke yesterday about the mayor of Detroit. You know about this story?
No, I haven't seen this.
The mayor of Detroit, who has been in 3 terms, has been, and Detroit's really going through an interesting renaissance as well, too. They've got a lot of problems, very similar problems to the city of St. Louis, but they've done a lot of good things in Detroit. And Detroit's back on, upward trajectory. All of a sudden, he announced he's going to run for governor, and a lot of people thought that was going to happen, but he blew everybody away by saying he's going to run as an independent. He doesn't want the Democrats stink on him.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
And to the point where people go like, well, hold on a minute now. He's been this dyed-in-the-wool Democrat for a long time. And when I say the Democrats stink, there are a lot of Democrats now that are afraid that the fallout from the Biden administration is tainted them. The whole thing about how they blow through $1.5 billion and Kamala Harris really wasn't a very good candidate. And we have Joe Biden and like right now, if you were to pick up any news site and say, okay, who's the president right now? Who would you think that if someone came from outer space and they'd been out of the loop for a month and you gave them a phone, you said, okay, take a look at all the news reports. Who's the president of the United States? Who would they think is the president right now?
Donald Trump.
Exactly.
Without a doubt. He's the one meeting with world leaders. He's the one that's dominating the policy stage.
Right. What's Biden doing? Nothing. Well,
sleeping.
I shouldn't say
trying
that.
To put a sentence together.
He's quick. See, this is one of the things I noted to talk about this morning, and I sort of dovetailed into this. There was a story that came out a couple weeks ago, and it bothered me because of the fact that I can't remember which governmental organization, some federal government organization, Biden gave them a 5-year dispensation for these people, and these are all union members, they're government workers who are in the union. 5 years. They don't have to come back to the office till 2029. I'm going like, hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. What is this? And Trump essentially came out yesterday and go like, you know what? This sucks. He's going to do essentially what the people at Apple did, and more importantly, the people at Tesla, when Elon Musk said, if you don't come back to the office, you don't have a job anymore.
Yeah, for sure.
Simple as that. So he's fighting. Trump says he's going to take this to court and he's going to sue the unions and sue the government. But why in the world would any governmental agency be given like a deal? And I think it's like 45 or 50,000 people in this organization. I should know my facts better. I can't remember what it was. But and I heard this on the news a couple weeks ago. I'm thinking, why would you do that? Why would you? And remember, we talked about this the other day about the fact that most of the government buildings are empty, and even like the Small Business Administration, the one guy said, and you and I talked about that fact, if that were corporate America, the guy said that if all the SBA employees, every single one of them came back to the office where they're headquartered in Washington, D.C., the office building would still be like 55% empty. Because they've got this huge building. And once again, John, I'll ask the question again. In corporate language, what would happen in corporate culture if that happened?
That guy would lose his job yesterday.
Right. The guy who was in charge of that division, whatever.
Facilities, would be like, how did you mismanage our space and our and our resources for that? So brutal.
Right. Why do you have a building that's 55% empty when every single person has a desk in that building and it's still 55% empty? And we're not in the process of, don't tell me we're going to double the office staff real quick, because that's not going to happen. Explain that to me. But in government, it just doesn't make any difference. It's like every time we come around this thing with the budget thing, they talk about, oh, we're going to shut down the government. I go, government shuts down every week. It's called Saturday and Sunday. I mean, that's, once again, try to get somebody on the phone from any governmental organization, federal, state, local, on weekend. And coming up on the holidays, try to get anything done in the state on the 24th, because everybody will duck out early. And, with the holiday being the middle of the week, there's lots of people that are going to take either that Thursday and Friday off, or they're going to take the Monday and Tuesday off, or they're going to take the whole week off, or blow their time. Once again, it just drives me nuts. I'm sorry.
Well,
John.
who does do a great job in government is MoDOT does a great job working on roads right before an election, if the road is right outside a satellite voting facility, right? They're great at tearing up an overpass. If you could do it right before an election.
I'm trying to think if that was MoDOT or if that was MoDOT. I was trying to think that was MoDOT or county, but yes.
Let's blame it on MoDOT anyway. Why do you got to be fair, Brad? Let's blame it on MoDOT anyway.
Ask Kurt Barr about that. He'll tell you the whole story. If you don't know what we're talking about, they only had two early voting centers. One was Element Church out there, which used to be the old Bell's Outlet Mall at 406170, and the other one was the election headquarters right there. Was it? I always forget what's that street. Is that Truman or what's the name of the? No, it's not Truman.
I don't know what that is. It's where you can take your recyclables. There's some good soybean fields out there too.
Right, and right at the very beginning, there's the Cry Distributing, which is the AB distributor right there.
Yeah, that's right.
But it's right off of 79, and it's sort of weird because people get confused on this. South of 70, it's Salt Lick Road. North of 70, it's 79, okay? And they did bridge overpass there, and it's sort of a loop-de-loop that you come out of that industrial park where the election headquarters, and you got to do a loop around. Well, when they did the bridge work, they closed the loop, so you couldn't go you could get off there from 70 and 79, but you couldn't get back onto 79. You had to go, unless you're going north, but most people weren't. They were going back south because that's how they came. They came west on 70, got off on 79, went north. But same deal. But of course, the interesting thing about that was, did I tell you this story? That
No.
I went out there and asked Kurt Barr about why that happened, and he told me he could tell me, but I would have to file a sunshine law request.
Yeah, and at your age, you'd have to have bifocals on it. You didn't just need more light, Brad, but you needed a little bit of ocular clarity there. I mean, yesterday we talked about Sammy Davis Jr., who had one eye. Today we're talking about Brad Hildebrand's vision. We know what the punchline is there. Before we know it, we're going to have one of our favorite people text us and say, are you making fun of people with ocular issues?
And she's only got one eye as well, too, right?
You mean I'm trying to come up with a metaphor here that's appropriate for the. I don't know. I mean, you'd have to ask whoever it is that we're talking about.
Well,
If we call one person, Brad, you call your dear friend smartest woman in the world. For another friend of ours, we need to think of a shorthand term for this person that you're referring to.
I have to think about that.
She's always talking about baking cream pies. Maybe we call her cream pie.
Well, see, brilliant woman, by the way, just like smartest woman in the world, brilliant woman. But anyway, it's interesting because I talk about the fact that I had the discussion just yesterday with somebody when they were talking about healthcare and they're talking about having eye surgery. And I say, well, let me just warn you about certain types of eye surgery. And I said, I'm legally blind in one eye because of bad LASIK. And they go, how's that? And I go, well, it's never a good thing when the doctor operating on you says OS blank blank T as he starts the procedure. And then he says to you, Brad, we've had a very bad situation arise. And I go, like what? We've torn your cornea in half. Oh, that's okay. No, that's no problem whatsoever. And what's interesting about that is, John, matter of fact, maybe in the break here, I will send you a picture which you will probably scratch your head and you will say, why is he sending me a picture of a billboard? But when I send it to you, you may put two and two together and get four, okay? Oh, John's beeping at me again, so I better take a quick break. I think I just lost John. Okay, we're going to take a break. We'll be back. Hey, you weren't there. You were gone. You disappeared I'm just going to go ahead and take a break.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?